It's always good, isn't it, to hear versions of certain stories that we know really well. To hear something that's just a little bit different helps to make us think and reflect. So today is the Sunday before Lent. Ash Wednesday's Wednesday. And it's often a surprise to have this story of the Transfiguration here, because we also celebrate Transfiguration on August the 6th. Press pause. There are going to be pictures if you want to come round. Okay. But it's like the story is purposely placed here in our lectionary so that we can experience and celebrate God's glory before we are metaphorically flung into the desert and the wilderness of Lent. That, of course, is a time of journey, and when we can draw close to God as we journey with Jesus to his death on the cross and then to his glorious resurrection. So the passage that Trish read and then the one that Matthew read have similarities and express something to us of the shining glory of God and how the experience of him being on the mountaintop can so influence our lives and those around us. The passage from Exodus comes at the end of a section that begins at chapter 19, when the people have been on their journey from enslavement in Egypt and have finally arrived at the Promised Land. You might remember that on Mount Sinai, God makes a covenant with Israel and gives some instructions, including the 10 Commandments, for life in a new community. And those instructions help them to know how to respect each other, each other's property, and the land. And then soon after that, when Moses is still on the hilltop communing with God, the covenant is threatened by the golden calf incident. There's eventually an easy peace that prevails after Moses intercedes on behalf of the people, and they continue their journey to the Promised Land. But God doesn't travel with them. So once again, Moses intercedes on their behalf, asking for a glimpse of God. He's given a glimpse of God's back because in the Old Testament we knew that weren't able to see, if you saw God's face, then you died. And God declares himself to be merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, faithfulness, and justice. And the tablets with the commandments are replaced, the covenants renewed, and feasts are established to mark that. When Moses' face shines at the end of the story, it's affirming the renewal of the covenant. It's an indication of Moses' relationship with God, of his openness and vulnerability before God and before the community. It's a sign that Moses trusts God, and therefore that the people can trust God and trust Moses to lead them. So, the Old Testament story of the shining face and the promises held within that. We then think about the Gospel story. It's found in what are known as the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. And sometimes there's a temptation to put those accounts together. But Luke sets his account immediately after the scene when Peter professes that Jesus is to be Christ. And it's as if the story is a confirmation of Peter's word and a foretaste of the glory that will be experienced when God's kingdom is fully present. So Luke puts an emphasis on what Jesus looks like. His physical appearance is transformed, somewhat reminiscent of Moses' face, but his clothes are transformed as well. And if you remember the Daz adverts, that always comes to mind when it's a Transfiguration story. Luke also uses dazzling white words when he's talking about angelic figures. And Luke's telling us the story that Jesus' transfiguration is not simply because he's experiencing God's glory, but because he is the source of that glory. We are made in his image and see him in that transfiguring moment. And we heard about Moses and Elijah being present, that continue the emphasis on Jesus' identity in the law and the prophets. What has come in the Old Testament, Jesus takes that further. The prophets are pointing towards the Messiah, the risen Lord. And Luke tells us that in that scene, Moses and Elijah were talking about his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. And then the most dramatic bit is when we hear the voice of God coming from the clouds. And of course that takes us back to the baptism of Christ that we heard about mid-January. But there are differences. In the baptism story, the words that God says are directed to Jesus. You are my son, the beloved. Whereas here, up on the mountaintop, he's talking to the disciples. And he's saying, this is my son. This is my chosen one. So the disciples are told to listen to him, which they pay the price for. So the challenge of the discipleship is just before that transfiguration. And then finally at Jesus' baptism, the voice comes from heaven, whereas in this story, it's coming from the cloud. And I'm sure some of you will have experienced being up on mountaintops and the cloud coming down. And where do you go? Here is God talking to us, telling us that his son is there, is the one who is for us all. And all of this occurs in the context of prayer. It's one of a number of examples in which, for Jesus, prayer includes a dramatic encounter with God. So it's an experience of God rather than simply speaking to God. So each one of us can take that opportunity to go and retreat and to be with God. So there are all accounts in the Bible of transformation coming through light. The light shining on Moses, the light shining on Jesus, showing us who they were and how they shone a light on the glory of God. We often find glimpses of God's glory as we experience the awe and wonder about us in nature and in buildings. And as we have a day like today, when we enjoy the beautiful sunshine in this beautiful place that we are, we can see and appreciate God's glory. On Friday night, Paul and I went to St. Paul's Cathedral to see a light installation called Lux Murius. A company are going around and lighting up different cathedrals around the country. And you walk around. I'm going to show you some pictures in a moment. It was quite incredible. It was a bit of a trip down memory lane. St. Paul's is where I was ordained nearly 19 years ago. And it was amazing to be in that place and to see the lights that did transform. So I'm just going to show you a few of these pictures. So the outside. And you walked in through a new bit that's where they put a memorial to all of those who died during the pandemic, which I'd not seen before. It was quite beautiful. But then into this. a west door with so many different images being projected onto it. Some of them just beautiful, beautiful colour, but then others which told something of the story of St. Paul's as well. And the dome. That was from the high altar down the choir stalls and picking up the light there. So being able to transform that place by the light and the large number of people who were there and were able to hopefully get something of the purpose of that building, a place to worship and to praise God. As we think of our world today, as more and more that we hear sends us reeling, we want to be looking to see God's light transforming what's happening, none more so than in Ukraine and indeed in the USA. We want to be seeking that light which shows the glory of God to our world. And we need to be shining in our community. 2 weeks ago, if you were here or watched online, Ian talked about what was happening in our world, but then encouraged us to think about working for the common good. What good can we be part of to transform and transfigure the places of darkness that we know into places of light and glory? We need to listen to God's voice, speaking to us, finding out where he is leading us. As we approach Lent, let's find times to shine and times to retreat, to be in God's presence, praying for his peace and light, his comfort, joy and hope. And discover what his purpose is for each one of us that helps us to bring about the transforming of his world so that healing will come and hope will reign over all. Amen. There's always notices. This week, as I said, we enter into Lent, which means that Shrove Tuesday comes first on Tuesday, and we've got a pancake party at 4:00, sort of straight after school. If anybody can make pancakes, can you let Nadine know that, please? And then Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. We've got a service at 6:00 that is communion, and there'll be the imposition of ashes. That's making mark on the forehead, the palm crosses that have been burnt and made into ash. And that will be repeated on Thursday morning. So if coming on Wednesday doesn't work, then come along on Wednesday morning. We've got a Lent menu, as we've had before. There are copies of that at the back, but I'll also, as I said, put it onto a MailChimp so that it comes out tomorrow electronically. Talks about some of the... there's a book called by Joe Sweeney that's called The Whole Easter Story, that's talked about, and there's going to be sessions at St Anne's Church on Tuesdays, late morning, and at the Mounts at Remco and Ellie's house on Wednesday evening. So that's there for you to read about. And then Sunday by Sunday from next week, we're going to have sermons that are on the theme of discovering life's purpose. So the fact that we're created for a purpose, we're called for a mission, we're living in love and community, growing through life's challenges, and then what is our purpose in eternity. So each Sunday there'll be a sermon on that. also the following Thursday. So that's how we'll link that all in together. So do take one if you want the paper copy, or look out for a MailChimp tomorrow that's got the that detail on as well. I know that some of you have already been registering on the website and looking to sign up for our electoral roll. So the electoral roll is, in a sense, the membership of our church. So if St Mary's has become your place of worship, and you're over 16, you're baptised, I think you've been coming for 6 months. So those are there are rules. Those are the 3 rules. We'd really, really encourage you to sign up for our electoral roll. And you can do that by registering on our website, and that will eventually take you through to an electoral roll form that you can fill in. And that makes it really easy for us if you're doing that electronically. If you can't, then I know that Jackie was here on Thursday with paper forms, and we can make sure that there are others around, and then that can be inputted. So please don't feel that registering and logging into the website is going to make it impossible for you to sign up to the electoral roll. Really, really want everybody to do that. The one that's existed is just white clean, so everybody's got to sign up for that. So I say strongly encourage you to do that. And then the other thing I want to sort of highlight and start to put onto people's radar is that the second bank holiday weekend of May, we've got the Wendover Arts Festival. So church will be full of lots of different arts and craft, people from the locality coming in with the things that they paint and make will be for sale. And there have been people working in the background to make that all happen. But we'll need volunteers over that weekend to sell raffle tickets and to generally support what's going on. So if you know that you're going to be around then, either can talk to me, or I'm looking around to see who else is part of that group. I know Bridget is, but very much involved in catering. But Sharon Wilson, who's one of our church wardens, Deborah Hale, they're all the people to get in touch with and say that you can help. We'll also make sure that a sign-up sheet goes up eventually for that. So, I think that's all the notices. I went to Canterbury on Thursday and was there for the consecration of our new bishop, which was wonderful, and then we welcomed him into the area yesterday. So Bishop Dave Bull, who is going to be a very, very good thing, I think, for our area. So we'll have to try and get a date into his diary to come and visit us here in Wendover. But I know that lots of people will want that as well.